Hi everybody, my name is Matt Bowie. I'm from the law firm Pastore and Dailey. If you're watching the video, my guess is that you're probably involved with a startup, or at least considering beginning a startup at some point in the near future. So because of that, I'd like to take a few moments to discuss with you a topic that's of interest to startups that are in their early stages, and that's what business form you should use to operate your company with. Just want to let you know off the top of the bat that there's a number of different laws in different states regarding how business forms operate. And so the discussion I'm about to have with you is with regard to companies that are operating in Massachusetts. So there are 4 different types of business forms that I want to discuss. The first is sole proprietorship, a partnership, limited liability company or LLC, and a corporation. And I'll start with a sole proprietorship. A sole proprietorship is a company that's run by a single person who's the owner of the company. Probably the best thing that can be said about a sole proprietorship is that they're easy to start. In fact, if a single person starts a company in Massachusetts, doesn't take any steps to form an entity, then that company is generally regarded as being operated as a sole proprietorship by default. There actually are no requirements for running a sole proprietorship. Unlike an LLC, unlike a corporation, you don't actually have to register with the state. If you're doing business as a particular company that's different from your name, there is a DBA filing that you need to do. But it's not anywhere near as formal as the process that you would need to go through in connection with these other companies. So that's the sole proprietorship. A couple issues with running your startup as a sole proprietorship, however. Number one, you'll face the issue that vendors, potential clients, potential investors, they treat a sole proprietorship as less serious than a company that's being run using a more sophisticated business form. The second issue that you'll run into is that an owner of a sole proprietorship will face personal responsibility for the debts and liabilities of the company. It means if a sole proprietorship owns some property, a person comes in and slips and falls on the property, successfully sues the company, then you personally, as the owner of the sole proprietorship, need to pay out of your personal assets to make the victim whole. It also means that if the sole proprietorship buys a bunch of supplies, that the owner of the sole proprietorship will have to. So the second business form I want to discuss with you is a partnership. And the partnership is formed when 2 or more partners enter into a partnership agreement. There's 2 types of partnerships. There's a general partnership and there's a limited partnership. And the difference between these 2 is with respect to how the companies are run. With a general partnership, all of the partners take part in the management of the company. With a limited partnership, there's 2 classes of partners. There's a general partner and there's a limited partner. With the general partners are the people who actually run the company, and the limited partners are more passive investors who take no role in managing the company. Now, just as is the case with the owner of a sole proprietorship, a general partner in a partnership has responsibility for the debts and liabilities of the company. With a limited partnership, however, the limited partners are only on the hook with respect to their own investments into the partnership, which means that they won't be personally responsible for paying out of their own assets if there is later on an issue with the company. So there are some issues with running a startup as a partnership. First of all is the liability protection that we just discussed. Partnerships don't have the same liability protection as some more sophisticated entities would. And the second is that investors are typically wary about investing in a partnership, preferring instead to invest in corporate stock. So the third business form I want to discuss with you is a limited liability company, or an LLC. So if you want to form an LLC in Massachusetts, what you need to do is you need to register with the state and you need to pay $500. Every year you also have to file an annual report with the state and pay an additional $500. Now, it might be more expensive to run your company as an LLC than it would to run it using one of these other business forms. But there are some significant benefits for running your company as an LLC that I'd like to describe. First of all, the members of an LLC are not personally responsible for the debts and liabilities of the company. Secondly, an LLC has the option of being taxed as a partnership. This means that it gets to avoid some of the double taxation issues that you run into with corporations, where the earnings of the company are taxed both at the time that the company earns them and at the time that they're distributed out to the investors. Now, an LLC can be run either by the members themselves or by managers who are appointed by members. Now, there could be some benefits to actually operating a startup as an LLC, so long as you're not looking to raise financing anytime in the near future. And that's because LLCs are easier to run than corporations. They don't have the corporate formalities that you run into when you run a corporation, such as having a board of directors and having annual meetings and things of that type. One of the issues that you run into with having a startup run as an LLC, however, is that investors sometimes are wary about investing in corporate membership units, and they prefer to invest in the stock of a corporation. So the final business form I want to discuss with you is a corporation. And if you want to start a corporation in Massachusetts, you also need to register with the state. You pay a $275 registration fee. Each year you file an annual report with the state for the corporation, and you pay a $125 fee with the annual report. Now, just as is the case with members in an LLC, the investors in a corporation don't face personal responsibility for the debts and liabilities of the company. But there are some drawbacks that are associated with operating your startup as a corporation. And one of those drawbacks is the need to follow certain corporate formalities. This means that you have to have a board of directors, means that you have to have annual meetings, you have to keep minutes of these meetings. Another drawback that you'll face running your startup as a corporation is that you could face the double taxation issue that we just discussed. So the earnings of the corporation are taxed both when the corporation earns them and when they're distributed out to the investors. Now, there's a specific type of corporation known as an S-Corp that doesn't face this double taxation issue. S-Corps actually are able to take advantage of what's called pass-through taxation, which means that the earnings are only taxed when they're actually distributed out to the investors. That said, it's probably not a good idea to run your startup as an S-Corp for a couple of reasons. Number one, S-Corps aren't allowed to issue more than one class of stock, which undermines your ability to do multiple rounds of financing. Additionally, venture capital firms are generally prohibited by law from investing into S-Corps. So for that reason, S-Corps aren't a good business form to use generally for when you're running a startup. However, a C-Corp or a regular corporation could be a good option for somebody who's looking to run a startup. And that's because investors are familiar with the corporate form. There's a lot of case law on corporations, which eliminates some of the uncertainty associated with operating your business, and investors typically tend to want to invest in corporate stock versus investing in, say, membership units in an LLC. So now to sum up what I just discussed with you, you have the four business types. You have the sole proprietorship, the partnership, the LLC, limited liability company, and the corporation. The partnership and the sole proprietorship, I've said, are generally not good business forms to use for the typical startup. However, the LLC and the corporation could be good business forms to use depending upon what your goals are for the company. So I do want to mention to you that the discussion I just had is really just a high-level general overview of the different factors and the different options that are available. And if you really want to start a startup, what you should do is sit down with an attorney and go over the details and the options with that person with an eye towards the specific factors that are relevant for your company. That way you can put your company in the best position for success in the future.